Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei got harem with Murayama and Irina? Part 3. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Issei is someone that could be considered strong. He has been trained by Kakabiel for many years, along with training under the best until he became 13, after which he went on his own, along with his mentors, until he became 15, to travel around and gain experience. He most certainly gained a fair amount of it, but that is a story for another time. Now with the years of experience from being taught by cadres, to elder dragons, to Adriano and his many ways, counter a person to Arya, and her ways of tricking a person to the point that they begin to doubt their own existence. He was not a big fan of that, especially against her alibis. He may have learned how to make something similar to that, but it is pretty much a knockoff version of hers. Nevertheless, Issei considers himself a strong, well-rounded fighter, so he never expected to shaken to the point where he might pass out. Especially with a devil heiress of all people. What a strange world. Thankfully, before he could pass out, Sona was able to stop her from shaking Issei anymore. Although Issei could be described to see everything spinning. "Help," Issei said as he fell forward. Thankfully Kaori is there to catch him and held him close. Although in all honesty she did think that he deserved it in a way. While Issei was enjoying the feeling of being close to his mate, he didn't hear the voice of Middled, who was now waking up from her small nap. Fortunately Kaori did and stood up to go get her. Unfortunately for Issei, who was lost in the world of being in Kaori's chest, he was dropped and his face met with the coffee table. "Ow, yeah, I think I deserved that." Kaori couldn't help but laugh a little as she went to go get Middled. Meanwhile Kali was talking to Asia about being a devil. "I truly do think that it would be a good idea for you, Asia. The church excommunicated you and the Fallen are crazy. But weren't you trying to recruit me?" Asia asked. "Not exactly, I was told to scout out sacred gear users and make sure that they aren't a threat. Since you aren't a threat in the first place, it would be smarter that you become a devil under one of the heiresses, because trust me when I say this, if you end up going to the Grigori, you may end up losing your mind." Asia couldn't help but shake at the thought, but Issei was quick to explain. "What she's saying, Asia, is that everyone there is crazy, and you may end up going crazy from being around so many crazies." "Isn't that crazy?" Issei said with a red mark on his face clearly from the table. "Also, didn't you say that you wanted to live a normal life?" Kali asked, and she is met with a nod from Asia. "I'm sure that the devils will help with that, and considering that they let me and Middle stay here for so long, I'm sure that they will be kind to you." Kali reassured Asia with a smile. It was also at that moment that she looked to the two heiresses, who should most certainly be taking this matter seriously, along with discussing on who will gain her power of healing, courtesy of the Twilight healing. Sadly for her, those two are not as serious as they should be, since they were currently having an intense game of rock, paper, scissors. A game that Riaz won, albeit barely and by pure luck. "Sonova." Sona would have finished that phrase if it weren't for a certain long-haired and somehow still ignored beauty coughing into her fist. "Ah yes, thank you, Tsubaki. Well, Asia, if you choose to become a devil, Riaz will happily take you into her peerage, and I will get started on working on the paperwork if you so desire." Asia was confused at first, but when she looked at Kali, she saw her nod at her with a warm expression on her face. "Yes. I would very much like that, thank you very much." Riaz smiled at Asia and her innocence and at the fact that she is going to gain a new piece to her peerage. At that point she summoned the case that has her pieces along and was about to open it, but sadly, she accidentally swung it out and hit Saji right in the jewels when she heard what her newest pawn said. "Hey Ice, did you know that Riaz is a natural redeed?" She couldn't hide her embarrassment from everyone when she heard that. In all honesty, she never thought Sakura of all people would be like this, then again she didn't really observe her. It didn't change the fact that she would have thought that since she was with Kaori that she would have been a little more controlled. "Really, so it's not fake? Damn, I guess I owe you $5, huh?" Issei said with a hint of disappointment in his tone. What's even worse is that she didn't expect Issei to be this carefree and silly. Although when she thought about it, she should have noticed that when he first met them. Mostly by the way he called her red and busty. Thankfully she composed herself quickly. "Sorry about that, Saji and Sakura, please don't tell Issei about my private life." Sakura just gave a wink and a salute, along with saying it in English, which she is pretty sure she learned from Issei. Aye boss." It was at this point that Kaori finally came down holding Middle, who was rubbing the sleep out of her eyes and acted as quite cute in the new couple's opinion. "Good morning," Middle said as she got down and went to the couch, but when she saw Kaneko, she went over to her and sat in her lap. "Comfy," Middle said as Kaneko couldn't help but smile at her. It was at this point that Riaz finished the reincarnation ceremony and welcomed Asia into her peerage. "Welcome to our family, Asia." Asia saw the looks from everybody, to Akeno being happy that she has a new little sister, to Udo being happy that they are able to help someone. Kaneko on the other hand is too busy patting Middle on the head to really pay attention to the new addition. Issei on the other hand is poking Saji to see if he is still alive. Sakura at this point also couldn't help but join in poking him. Thankfully after a couple pokes from the two Saji spoke up. "I'm starting to think that I'm just the comedy relief here," Saji said as he stood up. Still a little wobbly from getting hit in the jewels. He was only met with laughs from the two people. Along with a pat on the shoulder from Issei. "At least you're not hated. I mean as far as I know." Saji looked at Sakura. Something could resemble kindness, but he was only met with a side of sadism. One that Issei noticed quickly. "Sakura, you're doing it again. I swear, why do I have the feeling that you're gonna get along with Aki very well?" Issei couldn't shake the feeling that Akeno is only using the whole great sister persona to hide something that he could consider terrifying. Okay. I mean, now that I think about, aren't we all here for a reason?" Sakura asked to no one in particular. "That is true, we came to introduce our peerages to each other, along with asking Issei some question about himself." Sona said in a serious tone, but Issei opened his mouth and. "Oh, that's sweet. I didn't think I had some fans," Issei said, but Kaori whacked him upside the head. "Sorry, go on." This brought some laughter from everybody, except for Middle, who went to sleep while on Kaneko's lap. Once again another act that the newly formed couple and Kaneko find adorable. "Right, well then I will go first. I am Sona Citri, one of the co-owners of Kuo, and this is my peerage." Sona gestured for everyone to begin introducing themselves. The first one was the still clearly ignored black-haired beauty. "I'm Tsubaki Shinra and I am the queen of her peerage. Please treat me well, and Issei, please stop with the pranks against the perverted duo." Everyone looked at him, but he was only whistling a tune and not acting suspicious at all. The next one to speak was the blue-haired beauty that gave him that good kick. One that he could still feel even though he should have healed from it by now. "I'm Tsubasa Yura and I took a rook piece, also Issei, sorry about the kick." Issei only waved it off. "It was still a good kick, so it's all good." The next one to speak is a white-haired girl. "I'm Momo Hanakai and I'm one of President's bishops, and this is Ryakusaka, another bishop who clearly has a crush on," but Momo's mouth was smacked shut by a brown-haired girl whose hair is styled into twin tails. "Okay Momo, the world does not need to know that." Next up is a clearly energetic reddish brown-haired girl. "And I'm Tomo Meguri. I'm a knight in Sona's peerage, please treat me well." Finally the last one to introduce themselves, aside from Kaori, is a brown-haired girl who is also wearing her hair in twin tails. "I'm Haruko Nomura, I'm a pawn for Sona, it's nice to meet you." Everyone was looking at Kaori at this point. She quickly got the memo quickly and stood up to introduce herself. "Kaori Murayama, and I'm a pawn." "Kaori, you took 7 pawns with a couple of them mutating to revive you," Sona said. Kaori nodded in thanks. "I'm a pawn and from what we've seen earlier, I have a sacred gear called." Thankfully Tia came to the rescue as she appeared on her shoulder. "Karmic retribution, unlike Oasis Aegis." "Wait, Inarose, I thought you said it's called Oasis Adaptation." Inarose couldn't help but cough a little. "Well, to explain that one they both start with A." "Damn it, Inarose. I'm sure they know what you mean." While the two dragons were arguing, Tia continued her explanation. "Yes, unlike Oasis Aegis that houses my mate. Karmic retribution is a full offense gear. It is able to use my power to not only overpower an opponent, but also in a way curse them just like Oasis Aegis." "Oh, and you have the power to curse a mofo, when were you gonna tell me about that?" "I didn't think you were gonna need, considering your gear and your style of fighting, you wingless drake." "Oh, you did not just call me a wingless drake, you perverted thigh dragon." "Who told you that?" Thus making them fight themselves in a way. Karmic retribution's curse is more of a damage curse, where for every tick of damage they take, they will eventually take 7 more. But if Kaori were to achieve Balance Breaker, she will end up acquiring a power that could change the tides. So Kaori, I hope you're ready for a hellish amount of training if you want to achieve Balance Breaker. Speaking of Balance Breaker. Boys. Tia's voice was more than enough to make the two Oasis dragons stop arguing, so as to not incur her wrath. "I believe it is time for you to introduce yourselves." At the mention of introductions, Issei knew that he may as well tell them more about himself, since they seem to be the kind bunch. Alrighty, well then, to say what was already said. "I'm Issei Haidu and I was once a human, but now I'm a dragon thanks to my sacred gear, which I would have been happier if I actually learned the proper name of it, Oasis Aegis." "Shut it." "Nevertheless, other than my sacred gear I also use Injutsu, CQC, that wrench that I threatened Rias with, sorry about that." Rias waved off his worries. "It's okay, I'm sure I would have reacted the same way if it was my friends. Other than that, I also use a couple other things, and I also have another sword, but that one is too much of a pain to use. Even after all the work that went into forging it." This brought a look of confusion from everyone, but Yudo is the first one to ask. "What do you mean, Ice?" At first Issei was hesitant to answer, but then again it couldn't hurt to show them. Forming a magic circle that seems to be used to seal stuff away, made everyone automatically tense up. They also began to worry when they saw the pained look Issei has. But nevertheless, once he pulled the blade out, everyone was shocked to see a great sword that looked like a certain demonic blade. Ice, is that what I think it is? Issei looked like he was really struggling to hold the blade. To the point that he eventually put it back from where he got it. If you're thinking that it's Graham, then you're both right and wrong. Issei said as he stood up to go get a drink. What do you mean? Is it not the demonic emperor sword? Sona asked. Well, to put it bluntly, it's half of it. What I mean to say is that, now that I think about it, it wasn't that too long ago when it was first shattered. Heck, it was recently forged into the Marduk half, maybe a month before I came to Kuo. This brought multiple reactions from shock to surprise to worry about Issei's health, but the most obvious was Ria's. What do you mean it was shattered? It's the strongest demon sword, so how could it be shattered? Ria's yelled. Yes, well, Excalibur was the strongest holy sword, but that thing was also shattered. Although now they have those damn fragments, but that's beside the point. What Issei didn't notice was the look of anger from Yudo, since he was quick to hide it. I mean, Graham could easily be shattered if enough strain is put on it. At this point everyone is silent, but Yudo is the first to break the silence once Issei came back to the group. So how was it shattered? Issei took a large gulp of what he was drinking before he told them the story. Well, let's just say that it was around half a year before I came to Kuo. Flashback, a frozen wasteland. The heavily injured Issei was holding onto the wrench that was entrusted to him as he stood against not only his former friends, but the very people that led to the mission's failure after they led the enemy back home, thus leading to the tragedy that claimed too many lives. The very same tragedy that he has every intention of making them answer for. Come now, Ice. I'm sure you know why we did this, a long gray-haired man shouted to Issei. This is Heracles, someone that Issei once held great respect for. It's because you never know when they will betray you, so it's better to be safe than sorry. A white-haired young man said as he held Graham up. This was the owner of Graham, Siegfried. Maybe if you had joined us, Ingvald would still be alive. It was at this point Issei let off a cruel aura that scared the two of them. Ice. I'm gonna break you fuckers. Issei yelled out as he charged at them. Heracles entered Balance Breaker and tried to stop him, but before he could hit Issei dissolved into nothing but sand. While Heracles stopped, Siegfried knew better when he tried to stop the attack from Issei. For the moment it looked like it worked, but then he heard something that he never thought he would ever hear. He looked up and saw the wrench not only clamping down on Graham, but it was beginning to break as Issei put even more force into his attack. Siegfried tried his best, and Heracles couldn't do anything as the force was enough to knock him away. Stop. Graham. It sadly Siegfried's pleas fell on deaf ears as Graham broke into two pieces. But before Siegfried could react, Ice quickly grabbed a half and stabbed him with it. Siegfried screamed out as he looked down and saw one half of Graham deep inside of his leg as he fell down. Issei picked up the other half with the intent to kill Siegfried with it, but before he could, he and Heracles were swallowed up by a mist, and as soon as it appeared it disappeared, taking Siegfried and Heracles with it. Issei wanted to try to find them, but a magic circle appeared below him and transported him. Back at Issei's house. After I was transported to the Grigori, I stayed for a couple months to recover, after which Dad sent me to meet with someone that could help me reforge the half I kept from the battle. Who would have thought that he would have sent me to meet with Lady Hephaestus? After she finished forging Marduk, Dad and I stayed at Greece for a week before I decided to go back to Kuo. After I came to Kuo I saw Kaori, and well, the rest is history. Riaz raised her hand to ask a question which Issei nodded for her to speak. Who's Ingvald? At first Issei was confused, but then he adopted a sad look, but it also shows a deep regret that he may be feeling. Someone who meant a lot to me, but now some tears threatened to fall from his eyes, but Kaori was there to help him as she gave his hand a little squeeze to show that it's okay. She is someone that I met during my travels, but then we arrived to a place in the underworld and well, some things have happened. I would tell you more, but right now it's still a sore subject. Riaz nodded in understanding. Any other questions? Sona was the next one to ask one. Dia mentioned you when she spoke of Balance Breaker, does that mean you have one? At first Issei was confused, but then he remembered that while he was asleep, Inaros was not. Inaros, you told her about it, didn't you? Ice asked the slightly chuckling Sacred Gear. Not really, but then again Tia has always been quite clever. Issei sighed as he couldn't help think that maybe Kaori got the perfect gear for her. Well, to answer your question, yes, I have achieved Balance Breaker, I just rarely used it. I guess next up is the Grimoire Peerage, huh? Issei said as he wiped his eyes. Right. Well, as you all know, I'm Ria's Grimoire and I am one of the co-owners of the territory. As you can tell, I have recently reincarnated Asia and she is one of my bishops. Hello, it's nice to meet you. Asia said, giving a small bow. Next up was Akeno. Hello, I'm Akeno Himejima and I'm Ria's queen. Yudo was the next one to introduce himself. Hello, I'm Ria's knight Yudo Kiba, and also Issei, is it okay if we have a spar sometime? Issei couldn't help but smile at Yudo. You're on. Issei shouted with some gusto. Kaneko was the next one to introduce herself, but she didn't move herself so that she doesn't bother middled. I'm Kaneko Taoju and I'm Ria's rook, also Issei, when are we going to your mentor's diner? Issei smiled and said another time. And I'm Saji Jinshiro, I'm Ria's pawn along with taking 4 pawns. Saji tried to sound cool, but at this point everyone moved on and Sakura was giving her introduction. I'm Sakura Kadis and I'm a pawn for Ria's and to Kaori and Issei. Fucking finally. Sakura said as everyone let out a laugh while Kaori had a red blush. Other than that, my sacred gear is Blade Blacksmith, which makes sense since I'm a captain of the Kendo Club. After Sakura finished, everyone just relaxed at Issei's house. After a bit of time passed, Robin came by to bring food for everybody, along with bringing a fair amount of extra food for Kaneko, much to her happiness, along with Middle moving to Akeno, and while Ria's was a little worried because she knew of her past. When Akeno looked at Middle, she let her onto her lap and held her close, much to Middle's happiness. After a couple hours passed, everyone was simply relaxing. That was until a magic circle that belongs to the Gremory house appeared, and outside of it a beautiful Victorian maid came out of it. Rafia. What are you doing here? Issei couldn't help but be a little miffed that someone just suddenly appeared in his house, but since it's the Gremorys he was okay with it. Lady Rias, I have tried to contact you about the meeting, but you haven't been answering, along with not being at the old building. After which I tracked you down and find you here in a lower boy's house. At that point Issei couldn't help but be a little annoyed. Boy. This lower boy has feelings too, you know, and isn't it rude to just suddenly appear in someone's house and call them that? Grafia narrowed her eyes, but Rias was quick to reprimand her. Grafia, I will not have any disrespect toward Ice, especially since he was kind enough to let us use his house for our business. Well, Grafia knew Rias and her peerage wouldn't be able to take her on, but when she looked at Issei, she couldn't help but be a little surprised that someone this strong was here and acted so casual with the 2 heiresses. I apologize for any disrespect, but it is important that I get Lady Rias for an important meeting that must take priority over what she is currently busy with. Rias at first was sad, but knew that this is an important meeting that she must attend. Can Akeno at least come with me? Of course it is important that the queen accompanies their king in an important meeting like this. Rias sent Akeno an apologetic look, while Akeno had sent her a small glare, but nevertheless she relented, although she did have to ask Middle to move to her big brother and sister. Sorry, Middle. While she was a little sad about not being able to be with someone that she considers like another big sister, she knows not to act spoiled. That's okay, but promise you'll come back. Akeno couldn't help but want to hold Middle a little closer, considering how she is just so small and innocent. She couldn't help but pat her on the head. Of course. Just make sure to be good, okay? She was met with a vigorous nod and a smile from the small girl before she went to sit between Kaori and Issei, who were sharing a blanket together. They quickly made space for her so that she can join the couple in sharing the warmth of the blanket. They were quick to make her feel snug as Kaori simply held her close, and Issei had his arm around Kaori and his other one, making sure that Middle is covered and warm. In all honesty, Akeno couldn't help but think that the 2 were already a married couple from how they acted. Not only that, the actions of the 2 dragons was quick to lull Middle to sleep, but before she went to the dream world, she said something that embarrassed them. Big brother and big sister are so lovey-dovey, I wonder when I'm gonna be a big sister, clearly from what she means, and the look Kali gave to the couple just made them red-faced, but they didn't really move apart. Aside from that, Rias also said something to Issei. Ice, if you want to continue our earlier conversation, you can come tomorrow. I plan on sending Kiba to your classroom so that he can bring Sakura to the clubroom during lunch. Right. Take care, Rias, Akeno. He nodded to the 2 of them as the 2 people were teleported along with the rude maid, as Issei would call her. So what's the deal with Grey and Rude? This earned a smack upside the head from Kaneko. That is the strongest queen. Grafia Lucifuge, not only is she the head maid of the Gremory house, but she is the wife of Surzich's Lucifer, the strongest Satan. Sona said, hoping that Issei would take back what he said. So what? Doesn't change the fact she just barged in, well, more like teleported in, but the point still stands. Sona couldn't believe what he was hearing, but when she looked over to Kaori, who only had a serene smile as she continued watching TV. Although when she saw the look from Sona, she just gave her a smile. You get used to it. Sona said as everyone except the people that live in the house began to leave. I guess I'll meet you at school, huh? Sona nodded. Yes, I'll send someone to go pick you up, and Issei, please take care of Kaori, okay? This was met with Issei wrapping his arm around Kaori and bringing her closer before he kissed her head. Don't worry, I'll keep her safe. But well then, good night everyone, and Asia, I'll be sure to get you into school quickly, but at the time I would recommend staying with Ice, if that is okay with you. No worries, heck I'm sure Middle would enjoy the company. It was at this point Kali decided to ask a question. Lady Sona, is it okay if I apply for a job here, and if it's not too much trouble could you also enroll Middle into school? Sona at first was hesitant, but she smiled when she saw the seriousness in Kali's eyes. No worries, I will try to see if I can find a job for you at the school, and I'm sure getting Middle into school will be a simple matter, and also Kali, since you're family to Ice, please call me Sona. Thank you very much, I really do appreciate it. After Kali said that everyone began to leave, Issei stood up to see them off, while Kali picked up Middle to take her to bed. Asia was also going to stay with Kaneko for the time being, until they find a better place for her. After everyone left he walked with Kaori back to her house. On the way they took a sort of scenic route so that they could just enjoy each other's presence. When they arrived to the front of Kaori's house, Issei at least had to voice a concern. Kaori, are you still sure about this? Kaori just squeezed his hand a little harder. Yes, I'm sure that I'm okay with this. I know of how big a heart you have, and I know that even if you have many others, I know that there is space for me in that heart of yours. I know I said it when I was dying, but now that I'm here with you and after spending time with you, I can say this without hesitation, Ice. Issei looked up to her and before he knew what is happening, he was embraced and given a loving kiss from the brunette dragon devil. One that at first he was hesitant he eventually returned. After they separated they gave each other a warm look. I love you Ice, and I am thankful that I met you. Before she could go into her house, Ice spun her around and gave her one last kiss. One that let Kaori knew that he reciprocated her feelings. And I love you Kaori, and I swear to always cherish and protect you. Issei gave her smile that made Kaori's heart swell. But before she knew it she just turned around and went back to her house, but she made sure to say her goodbyes. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night Ice. Good night Kaori. As they went their separate ways Kaori was bombarded with questions about her day from her family and from the smile she had, they knew that she had a good day. Although her dad did say something about his innocent daughter being taken away, but the family just ignored him. Issei on the other was just smiling like a stupid idiot, even though he remembered some unpleasant memories, he knew that he was stronger than last time and that he will make sure to protect his loved ones this time. Although thankfully for him, he did not fail the last time, instead they were waiting for the return of their 10-0, but that is a story for later. The next day came and as the new couple walked to school along with Sakura, who is happy that Kaori finally got the boy, Kaori had a peaceful look on her face while holding Issei's hand, and Issei has a goofy smile, along with carrying a pack that holds some lunch boxes, one for Kaori, one for Sakura, one for him and several for Kaneko. He swears she's probably a good chunk of his living expenses, but it's okay since she is a good friend and she appreciates his cooking. As the group approached the school, they began to hear whispers from multiple people. Some of them are whispers of jealousy from some of the girls, since Issei did have a small fan base, considering his title as the maestro of Kuo. There were also whispers of happiness from the guys, since that means that he is no longer going to gain as much attention meaning they have a chance, but there were also jealous whispers, since Kaori is a beautiful woman to many. Issei would most certainly agree. But what made them get a little closer to each other was the whispers of some people trying to see if they could steal them from the other. This made the two mates become really defensive as they sent a glare and a small amount of killing intent in the general direction of where the whispers came from. Sakura on the other hand simply pushed them forward. Alright, you can kill them later. Right now we need to get to class before we are late and Sona gets on our asses about that. The two nodded and went ahead to their class. When Sakura looked over to the students she couldn't help but awkwardly laugh at how some students looked extremely pale, although she will admit that they deserve it. Alright class, I have some wonderful news. We are going to have a new student join us, so please make them feel welcome. Also Mitsuda and Motohama, don't say anything perverted. You know what happens if you do. At that moment Asia came into the room and began to introduce herself. Hello everyone, I'm Asia Argento, and I recently came to Kuo from Italy, please treat me Wiak. Asia bit her tongue during her introduction, but everyone got the gist of it. Although everyone cheered, and when she saw Issei, Kaori and Sakura, she gave a smile and a wave. One that was met with a smile and wave from them. It was at this point that everyone began to ask question, and then an important question came from Aika, one of the most perverted girls Issei has ever met, and he's known Kuroka. So Asia, I noticed that you smiled when you saw our local maestro, do you have a connection? Aika said, and at that point a lot of the boys were glaring at Issei. Oh, Mr. Issei is actually a very special friend after he saved me from some bad people and helped me gain friends, something that I am forever grateful for. Asia said when she looked at Issei and is met with a smile from the group of three. It was also at that moment that some of the girls in the class, with Sakura being the leader, vowed to protect the innocent little angel, which is ironic since she is a devil along with Sakura, but details Asia from not only the perverted duo, but people who would take advantage of her innocent nature. Sadly they may have to work quickly, since the 3-size scouter is beginning to do his thing. Thankfully the girls were also joined by an Issei. Oh, so these are her 3 ac. Motohama tried, but was met with a book to the face courtesy of the local maestro. Although when everyone looked at him he was just sitting around whistling a tune. Although when everyone looked away for a split second they heard a thwack sound, and when they turned around they saw Issei with his head on his desk with a steaming bump on it, and behind him is Kaori putting a book back in her bag. While everyone should be worried, it's Issei and Kaori, this is a normal thing. Once lunch came around, Issei was trying to count down the time that Yudo was going to show up. Why he was doing this, you may ask. He's bored since Kaori was called to the student council office and Sakura was conversing with Asia, so he didn't want to be rude. 5 4 3 2 1 and Yudo. Issei said, but to no avail. He just took another bite of his lunch and counted down again. 5 4 3. Hiya, it's Yudo. One girl shouted as Yudo Kiba entered the room. Although when he entered he had a serious look on his face, but it changed to a happy look once he saw the group, well as happy as he could be, because Issei threw his eraser at Yudo's face. You asshole. You knew I was counting down. Issei yelled at the Prince of Kuo. He was met with that charming smile that every girl in school, except for Kaori, fell for. Well, I thought why not screw with you a little bit. That's what friends do, right, Ice? Issei knew he won this round, but he will have his revenge. Well played, asshole, well played, Issei said as he picked up the pack filled with extra lunch boxes as he, Sakura, and Asia stood up to go to the org. While they were at the hallway Yudo had a serious expression. Yudo, what's up? Well, it's just that there's a serious matter at the club right now, so I think that maybe you could come later. Yudo said with some regret because he didn't want to exclude one of the few people that he could call a friend. Sure Yudo, if you think I shouldn't be there then I'll trust you. Issei had a calm expression as Yudo went along with Sakura and Asia. Issei waited in the hallway holding the pack of Kaneko's food for maybe 5-10 minutes. Doesn't mean I'm gonna listen, but good try. Issei said as he went ahead to the org. While Issei is heading the org to answer the call to help, Kalwerner is fighting a battle that she never thought she would be fighting in her whole life. It is simply the fight against the glass bottle of an extremely strong liquor. Not only that the one holding it is her current boss, Venelana Gremory, the Ruin Queen. Holly knew that she cannot screw this up since it's Ice's and Middle's future at stake here. Although Middle did transfer next week, since Sona did say that she should at least get her school supplies. So, I heard from Lil Sona that you needed a job, but the question I have now is, can you hold your liquor? Venelana asked. Eh? Why would you ask that? Aren't we in school? Don't worry about that, what I want to know is are you willing to drink with this old gal? But why? Because in all honesty I really do need something to handle my family sometimes. You must understand, right? Kali was about to say something, but then she remembered Volley and Ice. Middle was so far the only one that made things easier because of how sweet she is. Those two idiots on the other hand along with the antics of the cadres. Pour me a drink. Because I honestly have some stories to tell with words that Middle should not be hearing. Kali said as Venelana poured her a drink and they began to talk about their woes and of how they have to deal with a fair amount of idiots. Then Alana had to deal with Ria's and her weakness, Serzich's and his cis-con tendencies and Zeoticus being himself, with Milica's and Grafia being the only reprieve from all that. Alwerner on the other hand had to deal with the cadres and their quirks, with Azazel being the #1 pain in the ass, not only that dealing with Volley and Ice's fiery competitive spirit, with her only reprieve being Middle and her innocence, and Penemu trying her best to lighten the load on her shoulders. Speaking of Middle, we see Middle playing with both Morgan and Kana, since Kali and Ice ask Corin and Robin to babysit her. So far Middle has been a good girl, even though she and Morgan do enjoy playing innocent pranks on Morgan's dad. It was after a lunch rush that the family was taking a break and enjoying a meal courtesy of a certain brunette dad when Corin asks Middle a question. So Middle, how is Ice? Middle is enjoying a bacon sandwich when Corin asked, but after finishing her bite, she answered. Big brother has a girlfriend now. This brought a spit take from Robin, since he still thought that Ice was gay, not that he was judging, but it's just that he never seemed to show interest in the opposite gender. And they are so lovey-dovey. And big sister is so nice and soft. Middle said while Kaori just felt like she was stabbed not realizing that it was Middle being honest. Really is it big sister Kaori Morgan asked, and Middle nodded. Dang it. I owe Kana a chocolate bar. Kana being the sweet little boy he is, tried to stop Morgan from feeling bad. It's okay big sister. I'm just happy that big brother is happy with bigger sister. Kana said not realizing that Kaori was just stabbed again. I still you won, but isn't big sister a human? Middle shook her head. No, something bad happened to big sister, but then a couple days later she became a dragon. So now she's a dragon. This immediately gained Corin's attention and a small prayer from Robin, mostly for Kaori. The dragon, you say? Middle nodded her head. And you're not lying. This brought a pout and some puffed up cheeks from Middle. I'm not lying. Big sister Kali pinches my cheeks whenever I lie. Middle said in a huff as it brought a laugh to the family. But Big Brother said that he wanted to bring her to his teacher to help her train, but I don't know who Big Brother's teacher is. Corin couldn't hide her smile, well, more like sadistic smirk, but a smile nevertheless. Robin, on the other hand, just had a blank look as he looked out the window. Oh, Issei, what have you brought upon poor Kaori? Robin said as a lone tear fell from his eye. Back with the sandy boy. Issei is currently outside of the clubroom when he began to hear arguments from Riaz and some random person that he doesn't really want to know the name of. Although Riaz shouted his name, so Issei didn't really have a choice in the matter. For the last time, Rizer, I will not marry you. Riaz was really frustrated if she is shouting at the random. At this point Issei just entered while everyone else wasn't paying attention. If you don't want to marry me the easy way, then Rizer will do it the hard way. He generated a fireball and threw it at Sakura and Asia. Before it could them, Kaneko jumped in front of them to protect them. What do you say, Riaz? Once they are ashes, will that make you see reason? But just when it was about to hit them, a certain dragon just stood in front of them with his back turned towards them. The fireball hit Issei in the back, but instead of pain Issei was just scratching at his back. Hey Kaneko, I almost forgot to bring your food to you. Issei said with a smile, and while everyone was stupefied at how Issei shrugged off the phoenix's fire, Kaneko snapped out of it quickly and grabbed the pack while saying her thanks. By the way, what's with chicken permission throwing fire around? Issei asked as everyone else couldn't help but look at him like he's crazy. But while everyone was stupefied, Grafia grabbed his shoulder and attempted to freeze him. But while everyone expected to see him freeze, Issei once again did something incredible, and by incredible, incredibly stupid. He shook off his shoulder, and all Grafia grabbed was a handful of sand. When she looked at him, she was met with the smug smile of Issei. She quickly regained her composure. Mr. Issei, I would like to know of how you came here. Grafia began to interrogate Issei, but Issei was prepared for that as he pointed at the door. The door? You know, the one you completely forgot existed when you rudely entered my house. Issei said in an extremely smug tone. I mean, I also made sure to announce myself to the others, but you were just too busy with Palo alla Parmigiana to even notice. This brought a slight giggle to Sakura because when she looked at Rizer, she could see why Issei thought of chicken parmesan. But while Issei wasn't paying attention, Rizer threw a fireball at Issei's face with the intent to burn him, but the fireball was intercepted by a torrent of sand appearing from the ground. When Rizer saw Issei's face, he was only met with the same smug smirk that Grafia was met with. Did you need something chicken parmesan? Then again, I could see that they skipped out on the provolone. How dare you? I am Rizer Phoenix of the immortal house of Phoenix. You should be groveling. While Rizer was talking, Issei turned towards Riaz, who just had a stupefied expression. Riaz, I know this isn't my place, but what's the deal with fuck it? What's the deal with buffalo chicken here? Issei asked. Well, he did hear the first part of Rizer's speech about his betters. He lost interest quickly, since Rizer only reminds him of many other devils that tried to recruit him. They were all annoying and talked too much. Cuss, in all honesty, he talks way too much. Issei said, still not listening to Rizer. Riaz was shaken out of her stupefied state and began to explain to him the situation. To say he was unimpressed was a slight understatement. Wait, you mean this weakling is the person they want you to marry? Honestly, I would have thought that you would have gone with someone that's worth the time, not some schmuck that looks like Palo alla Parmigiana. Hold the provolone. I mean, seriously, who dresses like that in all burgundy suit? Try to make it look good at least, not like some Anchorman knockoff. This seemed to piss Rizer off even more. Who are you calling some Anchorman knockoff, peasant? Rizer tried to intimidate Issei, but he is only met with an unimpressed look. Okay, how about buffalo chicken? Chicken permission. Tomato soup. Ketchup bottle. Sriracha, I mean, they do have a chicken on the bottle. This only served to further piss him off. Actually, now that I think about it, isn't there a way for you to get out of this contract, Riaz? Riaz nodded, but then he heard laughter from Rizer. Yes, she would have to fight me in a rating game, but as you can see, she doesn't even have a full peerage or any experience. On the other hand, Rizer began as he summoned his whole peerage. While everyone else became tense, Issei on the other hand was not impressed. Have not only the experience but a full peerage. Issei once again was not listening as he began to talk to Grafia. Much to his annoyance. So grey and rude. This only earned a smack on the head from Riaz. Ice. Her name is Grafia, I would appreciate it if you could show some respect. Issei rubbing the back of his head at this, but nodded nevertheless. Alright, Grafia, but still rude. Everyone looked at him like he was an idiot. I don't care if they're stronger than me, if they just barge into my house, or in her case teleported in, I will be petty. That's my house, so it would be nice if they would be polite about it, like you guys. This brought some nods from everyone along with Grafia, who was a little red at Issei calling her out. Once again, I apologize for any disrespect that has occurred at the moment. Grafia gave a small bow. It's okay, just make sure to use the door like a normal person. I mean, what if you teleported in while I was, let's say, changing, or Riaz slapped his mouth shut. Ice, didn't you have something to talk to her about? Riaz enjoys Issei's company, but sometimes he just needs to shut up. Right. I wanted to ask if I could fight on her behalf, since I do owe her one for saving my friend. This only brought a haughty laugh from Riser, but that was easily shut once Issei threw some sand at his face. Shut it, buffalo chicken. And what would be your terms? Grafia asked. I win, Riaz is free from the whole arranged marriage thing, he wins, he gets Riaz and a dragon. This surprised Grafia, since she would have thought that he would ask for something for himself. I notice that it seems to only benefit the parties involved in the marriage and not yourself, may I ask why? This brought a chuckle from Issei. Riaz and Sona saved my friend and my mate, it only makes sense that I pay back the debt. Issei said with a smile. Grafia couldn't help but smile at how Riaz was able to make such a good friend. Very well, I'll make sure to speak about this to Lord Lucifer, now if you'll excuse me. Grafia teleported out of the room, leaving both Riser and his peerage, Riaz and her peerage, and Issei, who pulled out his phone and began to make a call. You honestly intend to fight against me and my peerage? Do you have a death wish? Riser tried to taunt Issei, but he was only ignored while he made a call. Meanwhile with Corrin pulled out her phone from her apron and smiled when she saw her student answering the call. Yes, Ice. Hey teacher. I was wondering if you could train Kaori, and if possible maybe Sakura, so that they could take care of themselves. Corrin was extremely happy to hear that, because that means that she pass on her teachings to more students, since her kids were still in school. By the way, teacher. Is Middle behaving? Of course, I even went as far as calling Morgan and Kana's teachers, telling them that they aren't coming, so that they could play with her. You didn't have to do that. I know, but I really did want Morgan and Kana to make more friends, and I noticed that Middle didn't really have a lot of friends. Well, thanks, then I'm sure that Kali and a few others would appreciate it. No worries, also I may also think about training Riaz, Sona and their respective peerages. Please no, I'm already feeling guilty about sending Kaori and Sakura to you, I don't want the death of many others on my mind. Alright, but they should at least train, just in case. Understood. I'll come pick up Middle later. Alright, and Issei, be sure to stay safe. I will. Issei hung up after that. But when one looks over to her, they could only see an evil smirk. When Robin looked at her, he began to fear for Kaori's and Sakura's life. Maybe I should call Issa, and Sakura, and Elise, and Hinoka, maybe Kildori. Robin began to list off many healers, because he knows that they are going to need it. Maybe Ryoma to shock them back to life. Meanwhile back with Issei. Alright. Now you were saying buffalo? Issei said to a red-faced Riser as Grafia finally shown up. I have talked with Lord Lucifer, and he will allow under the terms that if you are to be defeated, then you will be a devil under the service of House Phoenix. Grafia said, and Issei nodded. Alrighty, maybe I should change into something appropriate, so give me an hour. I'll ask Riaz about where to go. Grafia nodded as she teleported away. Riser only smirked at him. You fear nothing, peasant. Riser said. But he was only met with a smile from Issei. Nothing within your power, Issei said as sand began to surround him, and just as fast as it appeared it disappeared along with him. Sakura was the first one to comment on it. Alright, now that was pretty cool. Sakura said as everyone else nodded along with her. Along with a few of Riser's peerage. Meanwhile Issei teleported on top of Kaori after accidentally knocking her down. The position the two were left in had Kaori with her legs around Issei and Issei's hand on her breast. Issei had a horrified look, but Kaori only sighed. Tried the sand teleport again? Issei nodded. Meant to teleport home? Another nod. Oh, Issei. Kaori just sighed. To be honest, I thought that you would be mad. Kaori only shook her head. I kind of got used to it, and in all honesty I'm not that embarrassed by it anymore. I mean, you did see me naked. She laughed once again, surprising Issei. I'm still trying to get used to you cracking jokes. Issei said, but was met with a small laugh from her as she wrapped her arm around his neck and gave him a kiss. How about we get up and then you can tell me what you're up to? Issei nodded as they got up from the floor. After which Issei began to tell Kaori about what he is about to do. Well, Kaori was most certainly worried because Issei was going to fight against a whole peerage and someone with the name of Phoenix, so she could guess what his power is. Are you sure you will be safe? Don't worry, Kaori, I'm pretty sure he's like every other devil I fought over the years. They rely way too much on their powers, and I'm pretty sure he'll talk way more than he fights. Not only that, I'm pretty sure he spends way too much time with his peerage, if you know what I mean. Kaori at first way confused, but then it clicked. Oh god. She said, only to be met with a splitting headache. Crap, I forgot I can't say that. Kaori said as she was rubbing her head, but then she began to blush as Issei brought her closer and kissed the top of her head. This only made her sputter out a lot of gibberish, but Issei smiled at her. I did hear that kissing the wound does wonders. Issei said. That was what our moms say to make us feel better. Kaori said with a red face. Well, it did look like it worked, so maybe there's more to it. Yeesh, just make sure to stay safe, okay? Kaori said, hiding her embarrassed face in Issei's chest. I know, I'm pretty sure that Sona will want you to watch the fight so you can understand how the pieces work. But aren't you fighting alone? Yes, but Riser's peerage is also fighting, so there's that. Kaori nodded her head. Alright then, I'll see you later, and you better win. Kaori said as she walked away. While she walked away, Issei simply teleported again, hoping that he to get it right this time. Only for him to teleport to a scene no sane person should see. It was the principal and his elder sister in all but blood, surrounded by bottles of alcohol, and by the looks of it, they are already drunk out of their mind. Honestly, I'm sure pushed Kali, why don't you have a boyfriend? I mean, you got tits, you can. Shush, I'm just waiting for the right schmuck, Kali said as she fell over. Issei knew now was not the best time to be there, but he took a picture of drunk Kali to haunt her with later, before he teleported to his house. Honestly, I need to work on that thing, without using the proxies. That is true, but the proxies are a great thing to use when in battle, since it can confuse the enemy. That is true. Oh well, let's just get ready and head back, and on a side note, I don't think we'll ever be able to beat Arya when it involves proxies and confusion. That is true, nevertheless let's get dressed and get to the fight. I really want to see that devil get what's coming to him. Sounds like a plan. Issei said as he went to go look the part. It's been 45 minutes since Issei left the clubroom and Riser left with his peerage to the battlefield. Although the look that everyone had on their faces says more than enough, they are scared for Ice. He is about to face off against not only the immortal Phoenix but his peerage, not only that they knew about the fact that Riser has never lost a fight except for those that were for political reasons. But not only that he was risking his own freedom even when he had no reason to risk it. At first they were confused, but then Sakura answered the unasked question. Ice will always help a friend in need. That's just who he is. Sakura said, being the only who had faith in Issei's abilities. She knew that Issei will find a way to win even if he gets hurt, he always finds a way. That is something that she was able to learn about Issei. Do you really think that he will be able to win? Yudo asked, clearly concerned for his friend. He was only met with a warm smile from Sakura. The same smile that shows the amount of faith she has in her friend. I doubt Kaori would let him live it down if he lost. At that moment they heard the door open, and with it, Issei is right behind it. Now dressed in a sort of uniform that belongs to a sort of field operative that is stationed in the desert. Not only that, they also noticed the armor on his arms and legs along with a chest plate. Hey guys. Why are you guys looking so serious? Because Ice, it's your freedom that you're risking for ours. Why would you do that? Riaz almost yelled. She couldn't hide the guilt that she is feeling. But she is only met with a pat on the head from Issei. Do I really need a reason to help a friend? Not only that you helped Sakura and Kaori, not only that you lot treated Kali and Middle kindly, even with the whole Cold War situation that we are in. So think of it as just me showing that I trust you lot, and that this is to show the trust between us, so don't worry, I'll make sure you have the freedom that you deserve. Riaz couldn't help but hug Issei and begin to cry her eyes out. Issei would have been awkward about this, but he knew at least to comfort her and let her cry her eyes out. There, Ice is here to make the bad chicken go away. Aki needed to voice her concern at this point. Ice, how do you intend to beat him when he can regenerate from all forms of damage? Don't worry Aki, you let me worry about that. Issei sent her a smile that brought some hope to her, but Sakura knew better than to fall for that smile. She would know it very well since it's the same smile that the two shared when they were about to ruin someone's day. She smiled knowing that they worried all for nothing, because Issei is going to find a way to ruin the chicken's day. Now then, could you show me where to go, so that I can go face the KFC? Yudo couldn't help but laugh at his friend's words, as Riaz readied a magic circle to transport everybody. But before Issei was transported, one thought came to his head. I wonder who is watching. Unknown area, Kuo Academy. Issei couldn't help but feel a little woozy after being transported, but once he gained his bearings, he looked around to see Kuo Academy. He might as well have guessed that Riser did this to try to break his spirit, but boy was he in for a surprise. But before he could charge in, Grafia, and slightly less rude, began to speak. Greeting everyone and welcome to the rating game between the champion of Riaz Gremory, Issei Haidu, and the House of Phoenix. I am Grafia, a maid from the House of Gremory, and I will be the arbiter of this match. In the name of my master, Surzich's Lucifer, I will be keeping an eye on this match. By using both Ria's and Riser's opinion, we created this battlefield which is a replica of the school. At this point Issei was beginning to strategize on ways he could scare the living daylights out of the chicken's peerage, but while everything seemed effective, he remembered that there were kids in there that seemed to be middle age, and he would never forgive himself if he traumatized the youngsters. So he decided it would be best to just knock them out, but first he needed some proxies, or to be more exact some doubles. In a rows if you please. Of course my boy. Inaro said as sand began to gather around his base and the battlefield. Also, do you think that we should? Why not? I mean, it's just us versus them, and I'm sure it would scare them if they saw a small army of statues. Issei had a smirk that was able to scare a fair amount of the people that was watching him. Although Akeno somehow found it arousing. Something that Issei would be better off not knowing. At this point Issei heard the words that sealed the chicken's fate. Your 5 minutes to strategize is up. The rating game between the champion of Ria's Gremory and the House of Phoenix begins now. Followed by the ringing of bells. It was also at this point that Issei pulled a knife from seemingly nowhere and cut his hand. While Ria's and Sona's, who were watching from the student council room, respective peerage began to worry, the next words they heard was more than enough to change that worry to awe. Balance break. Oasis Dragon. Balance breaker at that moment of the sands engulfed Issei, but once they dispersed what was left was a knight in bronze armor with azure accents and wings that cover his shoulders like a cloak. A cloak that Kaori knew all too well. Not only there was also a shield right next to him, one that seems to represent a Spartan shield. While everyone from the two peerages were in awe, Issei on the other was laughing. Did you really have to go for all that showy stuff? What can I say? I like to show off when I can, also the statues are ready, once the enemy attacks them, their location is revealed. Not only that you will be able to use them to transport yourself to them and catch them off guard. I wonder how they are gonna feel when they find out the shield is the balance breaker and not the armor. Now we'll get there when we get there. Now enough waiting, now we act. Issei couldn't agree. He ran ahead with his shield up ready to bash someone. Meanwhile a group of Riser's pieces, twin Lawless and twin Nekomatas, both pawns, along with a Chun-Li ripoff, a rook, were halfway to Issei's base when they noticed the sand sculptures turn towards them suddenly. The 4 pawns and the rook entered a combat stance with one of them hitting one of them, but even after that disruption nothing happened. Although they kept their guard up, although in the distance the 2 Nekomatas began to hear some kind of shifting. Everyone, I hear something coming towards us quickly. Everyone immediately saw something coming at them, but just when it appeared it disappeared in a poof of sand. The Nekomatas couldn't help but be a little scared, while the Lawless were practically freaking out. It's a ghost. But before they could freak out, the rook bonked them on the head to calm them down. Calm down, Isle, now is not the time to lose our minds. The Chun-Li ripoff said, but it was at this moment that an announcement was made that freaked them out. Riser Phoenix, 3 pawns, 1 bishop, 1 rook, retired. What? The Chun-Li ripoff yelled out after the announcement was made. How did he even get past us? Meanwhile, the 3 pawns, the bishop and the rook, were waiting for the announcement that they won, with the rook who looked like some biker who likes theater a little too much, using one of the sand sculptures as a punching bag. But then they heard the shifting of feet. Everyone got into a combat stance, but then it came. Later they will have sworn that they looked at every sculpture that suddenly appeared and made sure that it was just that, sand. Issei in with his shield and some kind of armor just appeared out of nowhere, and with everyone tried to regain their composure, Issei took the chance and smacked the rook with enough force to break the mask and sent her flying and accidentally trampled the pawns. That was before he threw the shield at the poor bishop who was seemingly terrified of what just happened, effectively knocking her out. Once the light of retirement took them, Issei went over to pick up his shield. I cannot believe that worked. Issei said as he looked back at where one of the sculptures was. This is one of his skills that he has learned from Arya. By creating some sand sculptures he can use them to appear in that area, thus making for a type of teleportation. With the only downside being that if the sculpture is destroyed, then that teleportation spot is lost. He is trying his best to learn how to use sand teleportation without the use of the proxies, but he knew that it will be a while before he could be at the same skill level as Arya. Now that he had his moment to think about things, it was time for him to charge. Issei said, charging to where he saw the last group. Now back to the first group. The first group couldn't believe what they have heard. A chunk of their own team was wiped out quickly, not only that the match barely started 15 minutes ago. But before they knew it they began to hear more shifting in the background. But once they saw movement the younger twins with the chainsaws charged at it. Wait. Nell. The Chun-Li ripoff said as her words fell on deaf ears. After a little bit of time has passed the others in the group began to see the 2 twins running back towards them with tears in their eyes as they were running away from a large shield that was going full steam ahead towards them. Everyone else began to fear for their lives as they noticed how fast the shield is coming at them. They also noticed how fast it's coming. If they were hit by it, they would more than likely going to be roadkill. How did they figure that out, one may ask. Riser Phoenix 2 pawns retired. Yep, the poor lawless were ran over. They tried to charge ahead only for it to backfire on them spectacularly. While the other pair of twins were busy thinking about the poor twins, they failed to notice the shield that was about to retire them, or at least until it was too late. Although there was more than enough time for them to say one thing. Oh. Crap, those were their last words as they met the blunt force of an unstoppable shield. But it was the next part that made Sakura just break down laughing and Kaori facepalm. Out of the way. Dumbus wrapped in aluminum foil coming through. Issei yelled out as he continued charging, even though he already trampled a couple people. The Chun-Li ripoff, being the last one standing of her group, tried to stand her ground and stop Issei. Riser Phoenix. 2 pawns 1 rook retired. Well, at least she tried, and that's what matters. Issei, now seeing the damage, only turned and charged towards Riser's base. Although the situation at Riser's base isn't any better. We now find Riser with his 2 knights, his queen, his last bishop, also known as his sister, standing in their base with the looks of absolute shock on their face because they never thought that someone they looked down on would do this much damage in so little time. Then another thought popped up in their heads. Where's Mira? Riser was quick to send his queen to try to rescue his last pawn, but they failed to realize that Mira was pretty much as good as gone. Mira is currently lost on the campus and looks extremely scared because of the sculptures. Hello. Mira was looking around, trying her best to move ahead and not be scared. She wouldn't mind anyone at this point, even the enemy, because she has a fear of statues, especially if they are in the shape of medieval knights from haunted houses. Hello. Isle. Shulan. Carloman. Ubaluna. She saw a shadow and quickly reacted by using her staff to hit it, only to hit one of the sculptures. She let out a loud sigh as she looked at it and facepalmed. Come on, Mira, you shouldn't be scared of simple statues. It's not like they can hurt you. Mira told herself, failing to see the charging shield, or at least until she turned around. Once she saw the shield charging at her at the speed it was going, her instincts, training and discipline went out the window as her brain shut down as she screamed the loudest scream in the world. While it may have served to give her position away to what's left of her team, it only brought her further humiliation as she was knocked into the air before she was retired. Riser Phoenix 1 pawn retired. Alright, now to the main course. Issei said as he continued to charge towards Riser's base, but before anyone blinked he was engulfed in an explosion, courtesy of the bomb queen. Ubaluna at first thought very little of Issei, but after what happened to Riser's peerage, she knew that she had to take him down quickly. Sadly, the explosion served to propel Issei into the sky, sending him into a crash course with the poor bomb queen. Oh come on. She yelled out as Issei crashed into her and brought her down to earth quickly. He just continued on his course. Ubaluna on the other hand was on the ground, just accepting the loss, because she just couldn't handle the fact her own magic backfired on her in such a spectacular way. Phoenix tears be damned, her own magic was used against her. Riser Phoenix Queen retired. It was also at this point that Grafia just lost her serious persona and was simply enjoying the show with her husband, who was currently laughing his ass off because he did not expect for the one person to save Riaz from a terrible marriage would be this unique. Grafia, honey, where did Riaz find him? Serzicha said, trying to regain his composure. Grafia was able to hold herself together, albeit barely. I believe she said that he was a nomad that came to Kuo to simply live. One thing for sure is that he is quite unique. Grafia said, trying her hardest to hold her composure after seeing Ubaluna fall. Riser had enough, he knew that it was up to him to put this peasant in his place. Sadly for him it's Issei, so it was just gonna be a waste of time. But nevertheless he stood in front of his base with his 2 knights and his sister as Issei began to approach. Once he was close enough, Riser shot a fireball at him to try and stop him. Meanwhile Issei didn't stop because one thought was going through his head. I just gotta run fast enough that the thrill of speed outruns the fear of death. Issei shouted as he continued charging. Meanwhile one of the knights stood in front of him. When he got a good look, the first thing that came out of his mouth was, "Out of the way, tin can." This caught the knight known as Carloman off guard because she did not expect someone to call her that. Sadly, that moment was more than enough for Issei to run her over. If one were to pay attention, one could hear her last words. What the actual fuck, Carloman said as the light engulfed her. Riser Phoenix 1 knight retired. Meanwhile Issei continued charging, and while the other knight tried to stop him, Issei eventually grew irritated about how none of Riser's pieces took his warning seriously, so he grabbed the rim of his shield, and before the other knight, also known as Cirrus, knew what happened. She was hit with the force of the shield and knocked into the sky, effectively retiring her. Riser Phoenix 1 knight retired. I told you to get out of the way. What part of it don't any of you'll understand? Issei said as the armor began to dissolve. Issei thought about it, but he didn't really care since the armor was just for the looks. Although Riser began to laugh and tried to mock him. It seems you are at your limit, maybe you are all talk and no bite. Although while Riser was talking, Issei went over to the young girl who reminds him of middle except older and with dreads for the twin tails. She was shaking in fear, since even up close he gave off such an intimidating aura, and secretly she did think he was quite handsome. What do you want? The younger phoenix said, trying her best to not to look scared, but Issei was quick calm her down by patting her head. I wanted to ask a question about what's his face. If you don't mind me asking. Ravel at first couldn't believe it, and she knew better to let her pride get in the way, considering how he was able to just humiliate her brother's whole peerage. Yes. I was wondering what were the activities that he put the youngsters through, because to be honest that may be what decides on how I beat this chicken. Ravel at first wondered who he was talking about, but then it clicked considering how Isle and Nell are the youngest. Sadly that didn't stop Riser. Ravel's blush was more than enough to answer Issei's question. That blush also changed to fear once she felt the energy that came from Issei. She quickly stood in front of him to try to stop him, but before she knew it, she felt a gentle hand on her head. Don't worry, I won't kill him, Issei said as he gave a quick chop to the back of her head, effectively knocking her out. I'm just gonna make him hurt all over. Issei said as he approached Riser, who was still talking. Now then, I was originally gonna give you a choice, but now I think it's best to beat the message into you. Issei said as he brought his shield up and charged at him. Riser was too busy talking about something about Issei's betters was quickly knocked into the building behind him, making a fairly large hole. While Issei stood back with his shield up ready to take the attack, Riser began to feel angry because he refused to believe that there is someone stronger than a phoenix. Not only that, if he were to lose, then he would lose the chance at claiming Ria's. How dare you? You should be groveling at my feet, you should know that this is for the betterment of. Before Riser could react, he was beamed in the head with Issei's shield, and while it was in the air, Issei quickly appeared above it and brought his feet down on it, quickly sending it back down on Riser. Issei quickly got out of the way, so as to not try his luck. He may have a high resistance to fire, but he knows that it is only resistance, not immunity. I really don't care about what you were trying to say, what I do know is that you're a sick fuck for screwing children, not only that you also tried to send my friend to the same fate, so I'm just gonna take you down. This was met with a haughty laugh from Riser. How will you be able to do that? I am the immortal phoenix. You will not be able to. Once again Riser was ignored as Issei beamed him in the head. Hey, that hurts. Well, you talk too much, and did you really think that I didn't have a plan? I mean, I spent a fair amount of energy to create all these statues. And if you were to notice something, it's that these things Issei knocked on the statue showing that it is solid. Are pretty hard. What is your point, peasant? Riser said, but before he knew what happened he was tackled by Issei, and the two began to charge through one of the statues. Riser couldn't hide his grunt of pain, but when he looked down at Issei, he saw the sadistic smile that sent a shiver down his spine. I'm saying that they look tacky, and I don't want to use my shield to break them, so you'll have to do. Issei said as he charged through another statue, before he began to pick up momentum and charge through another one, repeating the process until the two were pretty much a flaming wrecking ball, considering how Riser lit himself on fire trying to take Issei down. But once again the fire resistance came in handy as Issei went through each statue in the battlefield. Each one began to hurt worse for Riser the faster Issei became. This continued on until Issei saw the boundary field and charged at it full force. Riser on the other hand was exhausted from having to use his regeneration and his fire for so long only for it to pretty much do nothing as Issei continued to charge. Once he saw the boundary field only one thought came. I can't believe that I was beaten by an idiot in aluminum foil. Riser thought as Issei practically crashed into the edge of the field, but the greatest surprise was when the boundary began to break and fall apart from the force. But once Issei backed up he saw Riser begin to be engulfed by the light. Issei knew that he won. Riser Phoenix retired. Winner. Issei Haidu. Issei saw the field shatter and he began to fall, but he was far too tired to even try to stop. He may have been able to handle the fire and the damage, but it doesn't change the fact that he used a lot of energy to summon and maintain the statues and to deal with a whole peerage, so all he wanted to do was go to sleep. While he was falling he was caught by a crying Rias, who was thankful that she and her peerage was free from the fate of being Riser's playthings. But when she looked down to her knight in shining armor. No, I think he said something different. Rias began when she joined her peerage who all had happy smiles and some of them were crying tears of joy. Although Sakura's tears was from laughing so much. Thankfully Udo was there to finish her sentence. Yeah, he truly is an idiot trapped in aluminum foil. Udo said with a smile, knowing for a fact that is what Issei would be okay with being called. End of the part 3. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.